I don't know. I just thought I'd go over the thread, and there's been more developer responses today from Steelstar, so I thought I would just read through that and talk about it. Axel rant time. Woot woot. Yeah, a little bit. So you've kind of seen my core rants here, but yeah, I've got a couple rants. Although, honestly, though, Goat, I don't really have a lot of rants. I mean, I actually have more positive to say than negative on this because look, these enhancements have been, this enhancement tree has very much needed some attention for a while, and I'm glad they're actually getting to it. Even if they didn't fix things, like there's things they didn't address, like martyrdom is still garbage. Not they need to get rid of that. There's still things like aura. I think there's still like aura and burst. I think could use a little bit of buffs. I mean, maybe that's just me, and I know I'm biased. I would like to see Radiant Servant burst buffed a little bit. I would like to see aura maybe buffed a little bit. Although I don't know. I think aura might be in an okay place. But maybe a little bit of buffs for aura, possibly. Although, if you do really double down on your crit chance and your positive spell power, you can have a really nice aura. There's a lot of debate whether it really compares to what favored souls have, because favored souls, I think most would say, are the superior healing is the superior healing tree, the beacon of hope tree in favored soul. So like things like aura, I don't know what they do really to balance that with healing wall, because a lot of people really like healing wall because you can use it from a distance. Aura requires you to actually go and stand next to your allies there, so it puts you in more danger. So that said, healing wall is stationary, whereas aura can move around. So there is some give and take there between the two. But I think I don't. All I'm saying is I don't know if these changes really make cleric. They definitely make it more viable, but I still think most people are probably going to go for the favorite soul tree for who want to play like a pure heal bot. But yeah, I guess those are my main rants, and of course the we'll get into the raised dead SLA a little bit as I go through the forum here because I think actually based on the developer responses, surprisingly, I think they might leave it there, which even though we'll see, there's been a little bit of talk with the developers here in the thread about possibly changing that. So for anyone watching who doesn't know, they're going to add they're right now planning to add a tier 5 raised dead SLA in the revised Radiant Servant tree, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense because on a cleric you get a lot of spell slots anyway, so you're not gonna have problems slotting your two better raises in Resurrection and True Resurrection, and the ones that uses raise dead over those, even if it costs less spell points within SLA, because in a raid or something you don't want to use raise dead because it's very possible for the person to just die instantly. So I don't really understand the developers thinking there. Oh, I love Goat. You said, yeah. To be honest, it feels more like a super excited thing than it is pointed at the missed potential. Because I gotta assume if they're gonna rework it now soon, then they won't touch it again forever. So like this is our chance. Exactly. Yeah, Goat. You're right. That's exactly how I feel. It's like I know they're saying this is a quick pass, but I would be very surprised if they go in and actually revisit this tree again in the next 2-3 years. I can't see them doing that again. I mean, it's been they still really haven't gotten to the War Priest tree, even though they supposedly did a pass to it, but it was kind of a lackluster one. So we kind of saw that with War Priest. They did a pass, but it was a really lackluster one, and that tree is still basically used by nobody, at least nobody who's min-maxing to any extent. So yeah, you're right. We might see not a lot of attention, given to Radiant Servant after this. So looks like we got a couple more people joining now. So Goat said right. So hoping for the best for now. Yeah, that's why I'm kind of pushing for things like honestly, I know I'm one of the few people who actually enjoys playing a melee cleric in DDO, but things like burst are really kind of a core, really attractive ability for like a melee cleric who's always going to be up in next to party members, fighting mobs and stuff. So I really would like to see them do something with burst. Granted, I think there is a good argument. You could argue that it being a core 3 already heals for enough, but I know on my character, it doesn't, even with, great healing amp, really high positive spell power, really strong will really good. Let's say heal imp already. Pure 20 cleric, all of that. It still only heals for like maybe half my health bar. So I was hoping they could maybe up it a little bit. I would really like that. But yeah. Okay, what else do I want to talk about? Okay, a couple things I want to go over that I missed. Well, actually, well, really one thing. So in my video, so if you all saw, you all that are here, I uploaded a video on YouTube yesterday, actually very late last night, actually about 11:40 11:40 p.m. Eastern time last night. I uploaded a video talking about all this. But one thing I need to correct myself on is I misread this right here. So these tier 1 and tier 3 divine aid. So these are actually positive spell critical damage increases, not positive spell critical chance. I misread that. That was my mistake. So they're not quite as good, although there has been some discussion, and we'll go through the developer posts here in this thread, that they might make this better. So they might make it more equivalent. But I know one of the things with the developers is, or one of the things with certain players, like Healbot players, they're kind of not happy about this because they're losing critical chance from Pacifism. So right here, they're getting rid of Pacifism, which is the core 2 ability. Pacifism did give them some critical chance and some 25 positive spell power. So there are certain elements of this that, in a void are nerfed for Healbot clerics. So even though, of course, overall it's going to be a huge buff for every cleric because they're freeing up a lot of action points. This Radiance tier 5 is amazing, so you can't really complain. It's just in some aspect, Healbot clerics are getting shafted a little bit, but of course not overall, just in some of the details here. So it kind of affects you differently depending on if you're running. There's really 3 types of clerics, caster clerics, melee clerics, and Healbot clerics. So it kind of affects you a little bit differently, but I think the latter 2 didn't really care about pacifism, so I'm fine with them getting rid of that. But let's scroll through some of the developer posts here. Let's go over to, we'll just scroll through the thread actually and just talk about the developer posts. I don't want to get too ranty. I might get a little ranty, but I want to remain respectful. I mean, I appreciate that they're actually engaging with us. The developers here. I mean, they could. SSG does a pretty good job. Actually, I would say a really good job compared to other games of being transparent and actually talking to players. They're giving us a heads up. This is before even Lamania, so there is a decent chance that this stuff will change. I think definitely they're getting so much pushback on the raised Dead SLA. Like everyone in this thread is saying that the raised Dead SLA should go away and be replaced by something else. That I think they'll probably bend the knee on that, even if they disagree with players. But we'll have to see. But let's continue down through the thread. Let's just find, I guess we'll find the developer post or any posts that I find to be particularly interesting. Let's see. But I would say overall, there's a lot of people who did like it. I think one of the things I kind of wish I would have talked about a bit more in my video is they didn't really do a lot for turning. They still really haven't, for charisma-focused turning clerics, they really haven't done much to make those viable and epic. I know they are viable in certain senses. Like I know turning clerics are good in like 2 out to handle, for example. But I think overall, turning could be improved in epics. They didn't really do much for that. Someone also mentioned in this thread the possibility of different possibilities for the raised Dead SLA. So the raised Dead SLA they're putting in tier 5. A few people have mentioned things like mass protection from elements SLA, which I hope they don't do that. It's just not. We already have the spell. You only cast it. You don't cast it all that much. It's just not that useful. The really interesting ones I think are, well, first of all, the heal SLA would be really nice. Beacon of Hope has it. So if we can get a heal SLA for clerics in tier 5, that of course would be really nice. Save some spell points. I think it makes more sense for clerics just because clerics get less. A lot less spell points than Favored Soul, and that's one of the other balancing issues. It's like if you're going to give clerics like half the spell point bar of Favored Souls, you need to give us some, really solid advantages in other areas to make us viable. And they are doing that in part. So like the new tier 5 Radiance ability that basically is a like a super version of the Harper pin, so it can dispel like crowd control from anyone. And there's not even it doesn't even have a range limit. You can do it to anyone anywhere in the dungeon. So that's awesome. But I think probably a couple more things would make or probably needed to make Radiant Servant a little more attractive compared to favorite souls. I still think, like based on what I'm seeing, people will probably still go for favorite souls that just want a healer. But here's more people, telling the developers here that Raise Dead SLA is useless. One of the other actually interesting suggestions was a Raise Dead Mass SLA, which, that one's a little tricky. If they did a mass Raise Dead SLA, I mean, it would be attractive to take, but I don't know about balance issues if that would be okay. If we're in a raid and we're raising 10 people with one cast, I don't know. But I want to get to Steelstar's post. All right, so here's Steelstar. Some of his posts that I read today. I didn't talk about it in my video from yesterday, just because when I made my video yesterday, Steelstar hadn't gotten some responses. So let's just read his post here, and I don't mean to I probably disagree with him in some of these respects, but I want to remain respectful and not get too, because this is like my thing, like Radiant Servant Cleric. It's like what I played for 10 years, so I'm really passionate about it. So sometimes with players, and I'm definitely not immune, when you get really passionate about something like this, you can get a little bit feisty. But let's go through it. So Steelstar said, saying that there's a lot of good feedback so far. He wants to hit a certain point. So here's the Raise Dead SLA. So this is what he said. Steelstar said, I can see. So this is in response, his response. And Steelstar, so the developers, kind of posted, the main thread here, and a lot of the responses kind of is interacting with players a lot here. So this is in response to the Raise Dead SLA being underwhelming. He says, I can see where people are coming from on this one. However, we don't want to replace this with Resurrection or True Resurrection SLA for the primary reason that we want people to have to pay the full SP cost for the benefits of those spells. I would say that they already don't have to, because you can scroll out Resurrection. So the Resurrection scrolls do exist in the game. True Resurrection scrolls do not, as far as I'm aware. But Resurrection scrolls do. You can buy those, I think, from House Jurasco. So I don't, granted, and I think he mentioned this later, that granted when you SLA something or when you scroll something, you can't actually quicken it, which is definitely the big advantage of having the spell inherently, is you can quicken it. But still, it's like, at best here, okay, at best, the Raise Dead SLA would be a third best, your third raise option, because your first raise option is going to be your True Resurrection. Say you're a healing cleric. Your first option in any situation is going to be your quickened True Resurrection, because True Resurrection raises the character, your ally at full health. That's really important, especially in really hard content, Reaper content, raids. You don't want to raise someone with the Raise Dead spell. A lot of people will actually get mad at you if you use the Raise Dead spell in a raid, because it gives such a small amount of HP back on the raise that players can just players can get killed instantly right after being raised. So your first best raise is going to be your True Res. Your second one's going to be your Resurrection. And then your third best is debatable. It could be either your Resurrection Scroll or your Raise Dead SLA, if this is what goes through. So the advantage of the Raise Dead SLA is it will be a lot cheaper. Well, it will be cheap, and the main advantage, though, is it could be quickened. That means it's uninterruptible, it casts faster. Or your third best raise could be your Resurrection Scrolls, which of course cost 0 SP, but they can't be quickened. So it's kind of a debate there. Do you want the better raise with the scroll, but it's slower? Or do you want the Raise Dead SLA? I would still say the scroll Resurrection is still better in cases where you need to use the third raise because the other two are on cooldown. And that does happen sometimes, like in raids and really tough spots. You will have like multiple races on cooldown. Of course, when you're just raising one person, when you're running a 6-person quest, you're never going to your third raise, but it does matter. You are going to a third raise sometimes in tough situations, like particularly raids. So it can matter, but still, at best, this would be a third best raise for a healing cleric. So, I hope they change that. And they did mention here that they don't want people to pay the full SP cost for the benefits of these spells. Well, they already don't if they scroll it. So I kind of disagree with that. Respectively disagree with you, Steelstar. Let's see. He also says, as there were a few allegations in here that favored Soul version of the raised S. Wait, as there were a few allegations in here. I'm reading this wrong. That the favored Soul version of the raised at SLA. Okay, he just typed that wrong. Okay, we decided to check the data to see for sure, and then he's saying approximately 50% of all people who take Tier 5 Beacon of Hope take the Raised Dead SLA, which is about what we'd expect on our end. It's a useful SLA for those who need it, but people who don't need it spend their points elsewhere. For that reason, we're likely to keep the Raised Dead SLA where it is. Well, I think he's missing something here because there's a big difference that doesn't really make that comparison valid in that clerics get a plethora of spell slots, whereas favored souls get very limited spell slots. So you shouldn't. I don't think that's actually valid. I would say that clerics, it's not really an issue to slot your raises. So I could see a raised SLA actually being useful for a favored soul, but it definitely wouldn't be for cleric. So yeah, I guess all in all, enough ranting about that. I hope they change it. Either a resurrection, they could change it to a resurrection SLA, which would be useful, or a heal SLA, which is probably what I prefer. That would be kind of the obvious choice. Or if they want to get really nifty with it, make it a raised dead mass SLA, which would be really tricky. But that would be cool and attractive. I just don't. That might be too much. It might be too strong, and it might mess with some raid mechanics they already have in the game. So let's continue. So here they talked about the critical damage from positive crit. They might actually increase this, it looks like. So let's hope they do that. This is another thing that was actually talked about in the thread. Could we possibly transfer aura to another object or player? So the idea here is that you take your Radiant Servant aura and be able to apply it to another player. I don't really like that idea. First, because it kind of takes the aura away from me. Like, I see it as my aura. I don't want to be expected to give it to other players for healing purposes. So I don't really like that. But they're not going to do that anyways because it would be too much work. This is a quick pass. Let's see. Someone talked about divine healing and reactive heal aren't great. No, they aren't. So I hope they do something about that. But he says, Steelstar says, if I can find the time to shape them up in this pass, I will, but I don't expect to at this time. So they're probably not going to touch those. So divine healing is the really low healing tick that you can use. It's not very good just because it doesn't apply very much in terms of HP. Reactive heal, I talked about that in the YouTube video from yesterday. You guys know what that is if you've seen that video, but it applies a 250 HP heal on your ally if they drop below 50%. It's like an automatic, little bit of a safety net, but I think they should make that better. It's not quite what it used to be, considering your average good player in epics at level cap is going to be like over 2000 HP easily. Let's see. I don't think I need to talk about the turning stuff. Not too much else here to say. So I don't really want to read this, but I read this earlier. They're talking basically about Healbot clerics getting a little bit less spell power out of the tree. I think that's what this was about. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. Steelstar is basically saying that you're going to get more for your AP. There was a couple others. So this is my post. So this is just me basically saying what I've already said, which is why the raise that SLA, should be swapped for hopefully a heal SLA. But I already talked about that. I don't need to talk about it more. I think there was like one or two other developer replies here, and then I'll get on to actually playing the game. Unless you guys have comments or things you want to chime in about that you want me to respond to. So more people arguing about the raised SLA. Like everyone's arguing about the raised SLA in here. It's funny. For some reason, and Steelstar did mention this, they don't want to replace the raise that SLA with a resurrection, a true resurrection SLA, because they want people to pay for the SP cost. But it's really, someone's pointing out here that it's really not that much of a difference. I mean, even with the SP cost, it's like 15. The only applicable meta magic is Quicken, which is only 15 SP. It's not really a big deal. Let's continue. Okay, this is Steelstar going back about scrolling. So someone mentioned resurrection scrolls existing, and he says, yes, obviously, scrolling isn't costless either. You're expending skill points, obtaining items, and shuffling held gear as an alternate means of doing this. It doesn't require the normal cost of the spell and can't be quickened. So that's true, but I think people, I mean, UMD is so good in DDO. It's kind of like required. And also the other thing is, if you're like a cleric, you don't need to UMD to get resurrection scrolls. So, I'm not sure what he's referring to there, because you have enough divine levels to be able to scroll those naturally. You don't need UMD, but people that do UMD this stuff, UMD is like, everyone has to take it. Like, UMD is like, I don't know what they can do about it. I mean, I don't want them to make UMD worse, because the quality of life improvements from being able to use things like teleport scrolls are so good. But I don't really know what they can do here. But yeah, I'm not really sure what Steelstar is getting at here. It is true you can't quicken it, and you are expending skill points like intelligence and stuff to get more. That's what he's referring to get more skill points. Oh no, he's just saying skill points. So you are using skill points for UMD. I think that's what he's referring to. And then obtaining items. Okay, I mean, it's one spell slot or one inventory slot. It's not really that big of a deal. So I'm seeing some resistance here. I hope the developers change their mind on this. It would be a shame if that raise that SLA goes live. I mean, everyone's telling them to swap it out, and in here it seems like they might be open to it, because he says resist energies and protection from elements mass are interesting potential replacements that could fit within our remaining time budget. So he's referring to replacements for the raised dead SLA. So hopefully they actually address this. I'm not sure if he had another post here. I'm not sure if I've read all of these last page 5 and 6. Oh yeah, here was my other. This is another post I made today, just kind of summarizing, some of the things that I already said in the video. If you all watched the YouTube video that I uploaded yesterday, but yeah, basically the same stuff. I don't need to talk about it again. I kind of already did. Someone here mentioned making aura kind of on the same level as Renegade Master Maker. I think they get an aura that, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they get an aura, a repair aura. I don't play that class, but I believe that's the case. I remember running on my Warforged fighter and benefiting from that, actually. Not quite understanding what tree it came from. But I mean, it would be really nice if they buffed healing aura. I don't know necessarily that it needs it. I've talked about in the past that they should move it to like a core 4 or something, like move it out of tier 5, because it is a lot of an investment to get it. And I for a long time felt like, if you're gonna, I still feel like this, if you're gonna play cleric, you kind of have to go tier 5 Radiant Servant. Although that's changing because they did do the pass on all the divine spells, so divines are much better offensive casters than they were. So that's kind of changing, but still, if you're playing a cleric, I kind of think that you should, get aura, because that's kind of cleric's main thing, the Radiant Servant abilities. And if you don't get it, it's like, I feel like you should play a different class. And maybe that's just me and taste. Like, when it comes to being a divine caster, like, I would rather play a favored soul divine caster than cleric. Okay, let's continue. Someone agrees with me. Let's see. I think that's about it.